This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our webinar on exporting U.S. horticulture to Canada. We are very excited to have a Canadian customs broker on our webinar today to give a presentation. Cynthia Valencia is a certified customs specialist with Pacific Customs Brokers. She has 6 years experience in Canadian customs brokerage. She is the ocean release supervisor with Pacific Customs Brokers Global Trade Management. They are a custom expert specializing in international trade with roots dating back to 1954, based in Canada. They specialize in providing customs clearance and freight forwarding services to businesses and individuals importing goods into Canada or the United States. So she will be a wealth of information for all of our producers who are trying to export U.S. horticulture into Canada, and we are very pleased to have her on this webinar. Also with us, we have Laura Pixley, Miriam Ahu, and Alexa Kowalchuk from Argyle PR. They are SESTA's consultants based in Canada and are also, as most of you know probably already, because we hear from them often and they are our partners in Canada, but they are a wealth of information on the trade in Canada and a good resource for all of our companies. So thank you, Argyle, for helping coordinate the webinar and being with us today. And I am going to turn it over to Cynthia now. Great.
Okay, let's get started. This will be an overview of how to importing horticultural products into Canada. So let's get started. There's already an introduction about our company. PCV has been in business in 1954, and we have a 24/7 team in office for all modes of transport and all ports of entry into Canada. Okay. This is going to be our agenda today. We're just going to talk about the Canadian market, parties involved, non-resident importers, roles that everybody plays, customs considerations, permits and certifications, customs documents, non-compliance, shipping and logistics, the release process overall, communication, and route to market. So first, some stats here. The Canadian market, we've seen in the general imports into Canada in 2022 were valued at $757.4 billion. This is Canadian dollars. According to Statista, the sale of flowers and plants in Canada increased by $0.1 billion in 2022 from the 2021 stats, making it a peak $9.8 billion that year. And seed imports are valued at $609 million from 2017-2018 stats, according to Agricultural Canada. So it's quite a bit of money that's involved in this business. Parties involved. The main parties involved in importing horticultural products into Canada are the importers and exporters, growers and vendors, and carriers. And other parties involved are customs brokers, CVSA, and PGA, or participating government agencies. We can see here, this is a visual representation of the parties involved, and the importer is at the center of it all. So non-resident importers are in our eyes, they are located outside of Canada physically, and they are one of the two types of importers that ship goods to Canada. They do assume all responsibility for customs clearance and other related requirements. With CVSA, they must have a registered Canadian business number, and they can keep the records in Canada by getting somebody, a customs broker or accountant or another authorized organization to maintain their records. However, they can also request, to submit a request to CVSA to get their authorization to maintain records at their place of business, which is outside of Canada. This would be US and Mexico, because they must keep records for a total of 6 years following the importation of the commercial goods. So just overall summary here of the responsibilities. Their responsibility is import declaration, compliance, payment of taxes and duties, record keeping, like I said, 6 years. Audits and penalties. So all of the record must be kept if you're audited, or if if CVSA needs to, for whatever reason, have access to those documents, you must be compliant with the 6 years of record keeping. They must have access to all of the documentation. And there's also additional components, which we will go over briefly. Role of the importer overall. So like I mentioned, there's two types of importers, resident and not resident importers into Canada. These are again, what they are responsible for. So they must have business numbers, they must be registered, understand your legal obligations for the imported goods, manage your customs declaration, record keeping, post-entry adjustments. So if you have reason to believe that something was not properly submitted, then is your responsibility as the importer to fix that, or to request that the customs broker, whoever's helping you, fix that for you, and manage your supply chain. So full legal and financial responsibility with CVSA. Role of the exporter and vendors. So this includes growers as well. Growers, vendors. They receive the purchase order and they confirm the terms of sale and the Incoterms with the purchaser, prepare and ship the order, so they have no financial obligation with CVSA. Role of the carrier. They could also be growers or vendors. They communicate with them. They are responsible for transportation and final delivery to the bill of lading destination, responsible for routing the shipments, issuance of the bill of lading, and they're responsible for the ACI e-manifest reporting, depending on the mode of transport, what time frame they have to report this cargo before it arrives to the border. And they are responsible for customs broker notifications. So they are usually who the customs broker communicates with, depending on the mode of transport, especially if it's highways, if it's coming via ground. They're usually the first contact with the customs broker. So they have limited financial obligation to CVSA. They are responsible for the movement overall. So they have to make sure the shipment keeps moving until final destination. So we're going to discuss briefly some customs considerations. Live plants. So first of two categories are plants in soil, soil-related matter, or growing media. In the continental U.S., if they're coming from the continental U.S., they require a phytosanitary certificate, and they may require an import permit. Soil is prohibited entry from any other country other than the U.S. Growing media is also allowed in, but it must be approved under Canadian Growing Media Program, and they do require a phytosanitary certificate and also may require an import permit. Now, plants without soil-related matter, or growing media from the U.S., they also require a phytosanitary certificate and may require an import permit. And from other countries, also import permit and phytosanitary certificate is required. So the U.S. has a little bit more flexibility with the species that are allowed in without its import permit. Cut flowers, foliage, and branches. So these are, must be free of roots, must be free of soil media matter, and growing media, and also pests. So these are plants that are obviously not intended for growing on, planting, or propagation. They have no roots. They may require a phytosanitary certificate and may require an import permit. All of this depends on the species. It depends on the country that they come from, and it depends on the destination that they're going to. So different provinces in Canada may have different requirements for the same species. Seeds for propagation. So Seed Act, it represents any plant part of any species belonging to the plant kingdom represented, sold, or used to grow a plant. So documents or information required for importation of seeds. You need to have all this information clearly shown in all your documents or provided. Species name, crop kind, weight of the individual package, lot designation of seed, exporter name and address, importer name, address, and phone, crop kinds, requirement, variety of registration, name of variety, country in which the seed was produced, intended purpose, seed analysis certificate, import declaration form. Seeds for propagation. So there's some document exceptions here. Import declaration information and seed analysis certificate is not required for seed lots of 5 kilograms or less for large seeding crops, crop kinds, and 500 grams or less for small seeding crop kinds. SACs do not need to be included. SACs, or seed analysis certificate, do not need to include information on the percent germination for seeds for conditioning or research. SACs and import declarations are not required for lots of herb seeds that are 5 kilograms or less, or for flower seed, tree or shrub seed, true potato seeds, ginger seed, seeds of aquatic plants or onion, garlic multiplier sets. Seed acts and regulation exemptions. Items such as pottery objects with seeds or ornaments sprouting purposes, seed for production of sprouts for human consumption, seeds that are attached to an item solely for decoration purposes, seeds not represented for the purpose of growing plants, seed for use in food products such as mustard seed or cumin seed, seed for lab analysis including purity and germination, and seed to be crushed and analyzed for chemical purposes. So as we can see, it's a little bit more involved to bring seeds into Canada. Now, CITES is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. If anything, information about CITES, if you're not sure if the species that you're trying to bring in will be included in here, because this includes even if it is endangered in one country, it will be in the CITES list. They have a very good website that you can look into, and they have listed all the species and also the degree of protection that they require. So some CFI regulated commodities is not only plants, but we're focusing on that today, are also on the CITES control list managed by Environment Canada. For plants, some of the main ones would be orchids, many cacti, palms, and other common plants. CITES requirements must be met before CFI approval and CVSA release. So if you don't meet CITES, then you're not going to be moving forward to all of the other government agencies, so your product will not be able to enter the country. They do require the original permits to be submitted to CITES, so this means that also it might take a little bit longer for those shipments to be released into Canada, to be imported. And they are enforced, as I mentioned, by Environment and Climate Change Canada. Now we're going to discuss permits and certifications. Import permits. So many different, there's a lot of different things that will require import permits. Today we're going to focus on 3. We're going to focus on seed, soil, and live plants. Applications for permits are made in my CFI portal. So you just have to log in there, create a portal, and then you do everything electronically. We've seen them take import permits take anywhere from 24 hours to several weeks. It depends on the information needed. It may depend on the species. It may depend on how busy CFI is. There's different times of the year that it takes a little longer. It must be applied prior to shipping to Canada. Honestly, it's better if when you're thinking about purchasing something and you know that it requires an import permit, you've been told by your customs broker, that you start applying right away, just in case, like I said, it might not take the 24 hours, it might take a little longer. And it's only eligible to be obtained by resident importers. So here is an example of an import permit. It's very important to read the entire document. They are not often just one page, they might be several pages. So it's important to read everything that is involved in this document and make sure you have all the information required to be able to bring that species into Canada. Okay, so now here are some of the other documents that are required. So phytosanitary certificates. These are issued by Plant Protection Organization exporting of the exporting country. Plant protection products have undergone pest assessments. Original must travel with the shipment. For customs clearance, we only require the scanned copy. However, you are required to keep the original in case CFIA does request that. It could be requested, like I said, up to 6 years. You need to keep record keeping. Importers must keep the original minimum of 2 years. We say 6 years just because that's what overall CVSA requests. So it's just better to be safe than sorry. There's also some watermarks that can come sometimes in the invoice of the shipment. This don't require a signature, and some of the examples here we can see on the right side of the slide. The USDA one, then there's a USDA Canada Greenhouse Plant Certification Program. So these are requirements that are much smaller documents. Usually it's a stamp, and they can come with the documentation as well, and that would satisfy the requirements to enter it into Canada. Customs documentation. CVSA minimum document requirements for high value imports, which is 3,300 Canadian or greater, is the Canadian customs invoice. When fully completed, the CCI should provide enough information to allow customs brokers to classify the goods being imported, verify the PGA requirements, and calculate the duties and taxes owing to CVSA. This is the minimum requirement. Here we can see an image of an example of Canada Customs invoice or CCI. So the invoice requirements, this must be fully filled out. We need the description of goods, including the scientific name. It's very important to include scientific name, especially for plants, for all the species that we're talking about in this presentation, and the complete description. So does it have soil? Does it not have soil? Does it have growing media? Does it have bare root? All of that, because like I mentioned, there are different requirements depending on those situations. There are a lot of lookalike species as well. So we need the complete specific scientific name, pest risk assessments, and therefore import requirements are based on the species. So it's very important to fully describe, because it can make a difference for something that is allowed in and something that is refused entry. Terms of payments are important, conditions of sale or Incoterms, date shipped, value of duty. The date shipped, let's go back one step. The date shipped is very important because it can affect the rate of exchange. So it's very important to put the right information in there. Value for duty, everything has a value. So even if it's a sample, as a mall shipment, it's just a sample, it has to have a value for customs. Currency is very important. Quantity for shipping and sale. We saw in the seats, it depends also in the quantity. There's a lot of involvement in there with the weight and the quantity. Country of origin, it can affect what you require for customs clearance, so it's very important. And this is where it was manufactured, where it was grown in this case. Importer of record must be clearly marked, name and address of the consignee or whoever is receiving it into Canada is also very important. So the Import Service Center, they review the import documentation for Canadian Food Inspection Agency or CFIA, regulated food, plant, and animal commodities being imported into Canada. When the automated import reference system or AIRS indicates to refer to CFIA, that's what they look at. The NISC or National Import Service Center will review the information and return the recommendation electronically to the Canadian Border Service Agency, and then CVSA has the ultimate decision. Commodities that require NISC release must be declared by CFIA at the first point of entry before moving inland, or basically has to go through CFIA first, then it can go through CVSA. Just like the CITES has to go through CITES, then CFIA, then everybody else. So AIRS, they have a very useful online website, like a website where you can find all the commodities. It is available to everybody through the Government of Canada website. So you can go in there, you can type all the information. If you have the HS tariff for classification for the commodity that you're bringing in. You can type it in, type the first 6 digits in there, and then start going through. It's just a drop-down menu, and you start going. It asks you where it's coming from, what it's going to, all of that information until you get to the final decision, and it will tell you what it requires. It will tell you if it can even come into Canada. If not, it will say refuse, and sometimes it gives you the reason why. Sometimes it's just, refused. But it's a very useful tool to have for everybody. It also provides very links all to regulations and everything. It's just a very good website, very, very thorough. Import requirements recap. For plants, conditional, you require an import permit and phytosanitary. And for all importations, Canada Customs invoice or commercial invoice, scientific name, bill of lading, airway bill, or original bill of lading, depending on the type of shipment. So, as previously mentioned, the importer is ultimately responsible for the compliance of their import. Non-compliance can lead to many consequences, including what we can see here in this pyramid. So the easiest one would be shipment delays, right? It will take longer for you to get your goods. Sometimes I know plants can have a life shelf life or expiration date, depending on how they are coming into the country. So it's very important to be compliant because you don't want your goods to not arrive in the fully working. Shipment refusal is another one. Customs audits. So if they can see that you are not compliant once or twice, or they can see a pattern, it can also cost you more audits, right? They can pinpoint you as the importer. Seizures as well, monetary penalties, and import privileges being revoked is the highest consequence here. Some examples that we have seen. Not necessarily as it was mentioned at the beginning. I am more in the ocean import department. That is what I'm mostly focused on. So I have seen a lot of items coming in from overseas. Everything has to be clean. If you see machinery, it has to be clean coming into the country. I have seen examples of people buying a piece of machinery that they got a really good deal on. It gets selected for exam. They open that container and now it's full of soil. It's covered in soil, and they have to be sent back. So now you lost all the money, and now you're spending even more money having to send it back to origin if they will even accept it. So sometimes you're stuck with this thing that is just making you spend more money than you thought. It was a really good deal, and now it's not. Another example I've seen is you buying something that's out of wood and it has to be destroyed because there's pests. It's very important to keep pests out of the countries, right? We don't want that to affect our local flora and fauna. And of course, all of that, what does it involve? Cost to the importer. So it can lead to losing the cargo. It can lead to you losing your privileges. It can lead to a lot of negative impacts to your business. So it's very important to be compliant. If you're unsure, ask your customs broker. We're usually the best point of contact to be able to figure out everything you will need, or we can direct you to the right place for you to find the information required. And all of this should be done before you import any commodity. Sometimes it's better to do it before when you're even thinking of purchasing. Talk to your customs broker. So we're gonna discuss shipping logistics of perishable goods. I am involved in customs clearance, so I'm not the expert on this. I did consult with one of my coworkers that is in the freight department. So we're going to do a very quick overview of the main points to consider basically when you are shipping perishable goods, which is the topic of this session. So loading and handling. Most carriers that haul nurseries specialize in nurseries. Because it's so intricate. There's a lot of things involved in it. January through April are when most nurseries can ship on a dry van because of the climate, right? It's not super warm. In the warmer weathers, a roof carrier of wood or styrofoam may be needed in the truck, and it can be placed on the roof of the trailer to protect the plants from the heat. Or if it's a reefer, you have to make sure that you set and record the reefer temperature. Otherwise, it can affect the plants. Most nursery is loaded on carts, plastic wrap, as we can see in this photo. E-tract is used along the load straps and hooks to prevent shifting in transit. Some nurseries floor loaded in posts or burlap sacks, which is a time-consuming process. It can take 4 to 6 hours, so we need to make sure, as the vendor, as the supplier, to make sure the carriers are aware of the loading time beforehand, so they know that is what it's going to take for it to be loaded into the truck and for it to be unloaded on the other side. There's also different types: bare root loading with mud and straw. After this, the trailer has to be, after it's taken out of the truck and at destination, the trailer must be thoroughly cleaned. Shippers may provide carriers with extra information about the plants as to not be deemed dead at delivery. This again, it depends, like the temperature might affect it, everything that, depending on the weather and all of that, so that the goods are delivered to you in good shape. We're going to do a brief overview here of the release process. It's just a quick recap of everything we've discussed so far. So first, the vendor, they ready the shipment, they prepare the documents, and they send it to the carrier and broker. The carrier then picks up the shipment and proceeds to the border. They file the ACM manifest depending on the timeline required for the mode of transport. They send the cargo control number to the broker, and they transport the goods and make them available for clearance. Then the broker prepares and transmits the release request, uploads the documents to the document repository for CVSA and all other PGAs to review. CVSA then receives the release request data and forwards the required to the required PGA or participating government agencies. PGA reviews data and uploaded documents submitted by the broker, and then they return the decision to CVSA. CVSA receives a decision from the PGA or PGAs and processes the data and returns the decision to the broker. The carrier then can proceed to the border. So this is usually when you can see in the tracking that it's accepted. So this means that all involvement up until that point of PGAs and CVSA have said, okay, this is good to go to the border. The carrier can then go to the border and proceed, report to CVSA. This is when, if CVSA or any of the PGAs found something with the shipment that they want to look at closer, they can be informed. They can inform the carrier that it's been selected for examination. This, of course, can extend the time of crossing or arrival, depending on the mode of transfer. So crossing if it's ground, arrival if it's ocean or air. Sometimes it gets stuck at the airport when it arrives, or it gets stuck at the port for it to be examined. And all examinations equal extra costs and time to the importer. Once the release decision is received, then it can be delivered to the consignee, and then the consignee receives the shipment in Canada. Communication. So close communication is key to successfully moving a perishable shipment. You must confirm with your buyer what documentation is required prior to finalizing the sale. You can also consult your broker at this time. So this is what I was given. Are you sure this is all I require? And then move forward from that point. Convey all shipment details to your transportation provider or your carrier. Share all documentation with your transportation provider and customs broker. Confirm all timelines, production, loading, cutoff, estimated time of ETD and ETA. So when it leaves and when it arrives to destination. Share any concerns you may have regarding your shipment with your transportation provider or your carrier. Have an open line of communication with the transportation provider to provide timely updates regarding temperature and location of transit. Route to market. So there's many ways that you can consider here to be able to import into Canada. One is open your own brick and mortar location and sell to the public or in retail. Loss of investment here and capital required, but it is then but then you are the master of your own destiny. You can also sell directly to retailers. So for this, you require sales and networking. The third way is to sell to a distributor who then sells to the retailer. Again, sales and networking are required for this. You can also join plant horticulture and produce associations in the market you want to enter. Many associations do provide you with member tools, list of numbers that are shared, and networking opportunities. So while there's usually a cost involved in joining, it can be a helpful tool to break into the market and check out the market that interests you for your products, to see if it's going to work. Some recommendations here. Very important to not send unsolicited samples, because CFIA will still require clearance. So you're thinking that you're doing somebody that you're, and maybe it's a new, it's a new person that you're trying to sell into Canada, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to send this free sample to them. But if it is in one of these categories that we just discussed, it is not really beneficial to anybody. They do require CFIA clearance. They may require extra documents and hoops to be skipped through. So licenses, permits, etc. So you can only imagine how that can detriment your communication with that person or that entity. If you think that you're doing them a favor and all of a sudden they have to get this permit, they have to do all these things in order to receive everything else that is in the same container or in the same truck as the free sample that you sent. So it's important to make sure that they know that it's coming. Everything has to be sent to CFIA, CVSA, and everybody involved. We've seen some horror stories of people sending food to clients as gifts, and maybe it's something that requires a permit. Now the client received that they weren't even aware that this was coming, or it could be liquor bottles. All of this requires different requirements from all the PGA. So then all of a sudden they thought weren't even aware that this was coming in their shipment, and they have this extra bottle of whatever, and now they can't get what they actually ordered because this one thing that their vendor inserted into the shipment is causing all of this chaos. So it's very important to communicate everything that is in the shipment, and try not to do that without fully informing yourself. Unsolicited seeds, there's also a notice that that has gone out about that. It's very important to not do that. It could have invasive species, or maybe they're not allowed in. We've seen somebody that tried to bring in some seeds that were not properly labeled. So now all of a sudden the entire shipment, it was just a sample of seeds. It could have been innocent seeds, but nothing is labeled, nothing. We don't know what the requirements are. We don't even know what's in the package. So, it can cause a lot of problems. So it's very important to fully inform yourself before trying to bring in anything. Make sure that you're not going to have to go through any of those unnecessary hoops that can potentially make you lose your sale, make you lose that contact, and everything hopefully is going to flow smoothly leaving from where it was produced to destination into Canada. Okay, that is all I have today. Not sure if anybody has any questions here.
All right. Thank you, Cynthia. That was very informative and helpful. Let me, before we move into questions, I am going to share my screen and invite Laura to come talk about the trade mission. So SESTA is hosting a trade mission. We will be bringing Canada horticulture buyers to Florida and Tennessee. This is taking place in August, and the fee is only $25. We would love to introduce you to some Canadian importers. So Laura, I will let you talk a little bit more about the trade mission.
Thanks, Danielle, and thank you, Cynthia. So yeah, we're really excited about this trade mission. As Danielle mentioned, it's taking place in August. We are bringing 3 or 4 Canadian buyers down to Tennessee and to Florida. We're doing a combination of one-to-one company meetings and also farm visits. So if you have any companies who are interested, would love to take buyers to their facilities or have companies sign up for meetings. This trade mission is interesting because we're also doing a visit to the landscape show in Florida. So if any SESTA companies are exhibiting there, there's time before that trade show to have one-to-one meetings with the buyers. And then also the buyers will be walking the show floor. So there's a lot of time to have some FaceTime with these buyers. We have a few buyers confirmed so far. They're both from the province of Ontario, which makes things nice and easy in terms of shipping and logistics, just going directly north. And they are both from a fairly large garden center chain, so they sell a wide variety of horticultural products. We are working on securing a few more buyers, but they'll most likely be from across Eastern Canada. If there's any particular types of buyers that companies are interested in meeting with, feel free to let us know, and we'll do some more outreach to those specific buyers. But otherwise, we're very excited about this trade mission, and the buyers that are confirmed are very excited. So looking forward to being in Tennessee and in Florida with these horticulture buyers.
Great, wonderful. Thanks, Laura. All right. So if anybody is interested, you know the drill. It's pretty easy to just register and pay on the website. And this, of course, is under our events tab here. So now we'll move into some questions. We did have something come through, Cynthia. So it says, just to clarify, an SAC is not required for import of ginseng seed into Canada, but this is independent of the CITES import documentation required for the import of ginseng seed into Canada, as the two ginseng species, in parentheses, Panax ginseng and Panax quincifolius, are CITES Appendix 2 species.
Yeah, so if there's CITES, that will take a priority over the, like I said, CITES is number one. Then it would be CFI. So if it's under the CITES, then that will be the first permit that you have to get before even moving forward to the next government, to the next government agency. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Another question, obviously subject to the harvest regulations in the individual U.S. states with approved harvest programs. Oh, maybe that was just a comment on the.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question, Cynthia. In regards to import permits, you mentioned that the import permit is only available to resident importers.
Yes.
Is there another option for non-resident importers, or do they need to work with a resident importer? Like, can you tell us more about how that works?
So if you go through you have to log in through the CFI portal. And then from there, you can go in. Honestly, US has a little bit more leniency when getting those. So if it's a US vendor and they work with CFIA, they can work around some of that. It depends on the commodity, honestly, when it ends up happening. Or it may require that you need the consignee or the person that's receiving it into Canada to work with you in order to get that permit.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions?
It was a lot of information, so if anybody has more questions, you can also feel free to email me or email the company, and we can do some research and be able to provide like a more involved answer, a more detailed answer to any of the questions that might pop up.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a resource for our companies, especially with all this technical assistance. It's really, really valuable. Wonderful. Well, have a great day, and thank you all for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on the trade mission. Take care.
Perfect. Thank you.